now, ladies and gentlemen, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Welcome to Down the Garden Path, where each week we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice while doing our best to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape. I'm Joanne Shaw, owner of Down2Earth Landscape Design, and with me is my co-host and co-author, Matthew Dressing.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Matthew Dressing, owner of Natural Affinity Garden Design. As landscape designers and gardeners, we believe it's important and possible to have great gardens, which are sustainable and low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen.
That's right. Well, after 9 seasons and over 340 episodes, Down the Garden Path podcast is ending its live broadcast here on Reality Radio 101. Tonight, we're looking down the garden path through the years to recount some of our favorite episodes, topics, guests, and moments since the first show aired on Monday, November 17th, 2014, and share what our future plans will be for the Down to the Garden Path podcast. And so we'd love to hear from you. What were your favorite topics? Do you have a favorite guest? What did you learn from us? We'd love to hear from you. Write us at downthegardenpathpodcast@hotmail.com.
You were getting like a little choked up there.
I know, that was really hard to say. It's easier for you to write it than I had to say it. Oh my gosh. So thank you everybody for listening and for joining us here tonight. I know we've gotten last 2 weeks, we've gotten some lovely messages from everybody, and I will answer them. I just haven't had time. But I will answer all your emails. So thank you. Oh my goodness.
So looking down the garden path, back down that big, long, winding garden path journey that has brought us here over 340 episodes later. Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell everybody, how did you start the show over 9 years ago? Where did it all begin?
It all began with Gary, right, Gary? So I had a part-time job in a printing store, and Gary was a client there and would come in. The owner was a friend of his, and shout out to our memory of Armand, who's not with us anymore, but he was my boss, and Gary would come in to chat with him and got to know me and what I knew. And Gary said, shortly after meeting me, Gary, I think you said, you really should do a radio show. And I was like, no way, nobody really likes the sound of their own voice, right? You and I both have talked about that. And so it's like, who would want to listen to me? And I think it was like a year that every time he'd pop in, he'd kind of, mention it and bring it up again and say, I really should think about it. And as my business was picking up and stuff, I just thought, okay, well, if I don't do it, then someone else is going to do it and I'm going to regret it. So I thought, well, let me just give it a shot. And so it comes out to Gary for believing in me and thinking I could do this. And then he got stuck with me for 9.5 years on a Monday night. Right, Gary?
It's been a beautiful pleasure. Believe me.
So thank you so it's, you never know where opportunities like this will come, right? And who you'll meet along the way. And we've met some amazing people, but it really does all start with Gary, who owns Reality Radio 101 and has a lot of broadcasters, as most of our listeners know, right? You've got 7 days a week, many hours of the day.
Yes.
Yes. And, and you had Monday at 7 available, and it's been blocked off like my friends, and everybody knows for the most part, over, they'll text me and then like during the show and they're like, oh, sorry, radio show. So it's been a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes.
Here as well.
If you haven't had a chance, you have to go back and listen to the first episode of Down the Garden Path.
Did you go listen to it?
I did. You know what? And I did just recently, and I have to admit to everybody, it was the first time that I'd ever listened to it in all the years, because I just joined you, right? And
yeah,
I even forget what year it was. I think I have it somewhere here in the notes.
You do have it. Yeah, you mentioned it to me. Yes. Okay, keep going.
But it was great. It was all the fall cleanup and winter protection for your garden. And listening to it, I was just so surprised, um, in a good way, because I think you've grown so much. But you sounded so nervous because it was your first time on radio, and now you're just so confident and outgoing, which you are as normally as a person in general, right? So I was just so surprised, and was just thinking back to some of the comments and things. Gary asked during that episode, "When are you going to write your first book?" And then that's happened. And
Did he say that during the first episode?
he did. He said, "So just a
Gary.
question." I think about halfway through, he said, "Yeah. So when are you going to write your first book? 'Cause
Oh
you
my
have
goodness.
so much wonderful
Oh my
information
goodness.
here." Yeah. So you even way back on day one, you asked her. Yeah. So it was great.
How
Gary,
forward of me, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny. I'm trying to find your first episode. It wasn't in the notes, you said. Yeah, it was very hard to do it alone. Like Gary was a huge support, don't get me wrong. So and you were and I had you on for, several episodes. You were the guest. And we just kind of hit it off, and we found like it was so much easier just to kind of bounce something off. And I was, the gardener, and you were like, you had the science knowledge, and I joked throughout the episodes about how your face changes and lights up when we start talking science, and how you can pronounce the botanical name so beautifully, and so I don't know, like it just came, like it was like, did you ever think, like, would you like to join me? And I feel like that really helped me hit my stride, because it was much more comfortable to like bounce things, like even in the planning, like even before the show, to kind of like, what do you think this idea, like, uh, so people know, like, or you hope you realize that there's work behind, it's not just showing up, although sometimes it is, but there's not just showing up
Let's be honest.
tonight. But there is work and planning that goes into it, and it was harder. I'm anybody's followed Gretchen Rubin, I am an upholder. I need outward motivation. Like I need some, right? So you really that really helped, because it was hard to think of topics on my own and not bounce, any ideas, like not to have somebody to bounce those ideas off of. And Gary was great during the show, and helping with me with listener questions and guests and stuff like that. Always reminding me of, what was the sign you used to hold up when we were in the studio, Gary? It's not about you.
Yeah. Right.
Right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've gotten better. Have I gotten better?
Yes, of course. Of course.
But Gary was like, we're interviewing a guest, and I'd start talking about me. And so Gary'd have a sign like through the window, like, stop talking. So that was always helpful. And that kind of thing. So yeah, so we miss, the studio, the red room, we like to call it. So if you've seen some of the pictures, and I'm sure we'll post some past pictures, the studio was all painted red, right? So depends on what we were wearing and how we looked in the red.
Yes, wearing blues and greens and reds, and yes, it was a great time going into the studio. We do miss that.
For sure. And even then, technology transition, because Gary, we didn't used to see the email list. Like you had to read because you got the emails, right?
Right, that's correct.
And so you used to have to read the questions, and we'd have to answer them. And then we got the computer in the studio. It was like, whoa, we can read and then it was like, can we really read our own? Like, and still talk, like, it's like one more thing mentally. Can we do that and not be distracted and stuff? So yeah, so things, changed for your studio and your growth of reality radio while I was there too.
Absolutely. And it's grown technology wise. And then we really had to get some technology when COVID hit, because, no one was coming in here into a studio. Right. And then, of course, Zoom was invented, and a lot of the broadcasters still prefer Zoom, because they say, hey, I come home, I'm there, I can do it right from my my den, my office. I don't have to travel. I don't have to worry about bad weather, and they're preferring it. A lot of broadcasters.
Matt and I kind of do too. Like, and although Matt's like really close to you, so he had a very short commute to your place, but I had a much longer commute, which is why historically we didn't do it on holiday Mondays or anything, because I didn't want to drive home in the traffic. Yeah. So that was me. But since we really stopped, since we were just the traffic on the stairs up from the kitchen up to the room, my office, right? I can't really complain about that. So we've we've done more holiday Mondays since COVID,
Yeah.
just because it is convenient. So yeah, it is nice to have that convenience of Zoom, and I don't think, it didn't change the sound quality or
No,
listeners.
not really. Not really. There's always in studio is better because you're going direct microphone right into the system, where here we have to, as you know, rely on internet protocols, right? So, but
Yeah.
but even mainstream radio, I do voiceovers for different radio stations around the GTA, and I used to go into their studios, especially the Chum ones and iHeartRadio people, and now
Okay.
we do everything by Zoom. They set up a recording system, which they have, and I do the voiceovers just like I'm talking to you now, and they record them there remotely, and they mix them and put them on the air. So, I think, I hate to say it, but I think a lot of the studios are going in dying mode now because of technology.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's changing, and I think people's time, to sit in traffic, and because even yeah, GTA traffic, but even for me from Pickering to Oshawa, right?
Mhm.
Like if there
Yep.
was there was a couple times where I do remember some of those where there was like literally an accident, and either because we also had in studio guests, so many were over the phone, and that was a little dicey because a lot of times they were like in the country and didn't have the best internet, right? So
Yeah.
sound quality. So if you do listen back, I hope you do listen back to some of the past shows that are on my website. But sometimes, it was no fault of Gary's. It just was their, their phone, analog phones, right? But sometimes it was like when we had guests in the studio, that was great. But if there was like traffic or an accident or something, it was like,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that could be dicey, but everything worked out okay, and yeah. And Matt, I do so appreciate that you said yes.
Yes. Well, and it was such a surprise, right? I was even nervous going on to the show first because we met through our friend Janice
That's right.
at the garden center that I worked at. And I was like, oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. Live radio, really?
Yeah.
Sure. Because, what an opportunity, right? I've never done radio like that before, and it sounded so much fun. But yeah, no, it was a great. I was trying to find the date. I found the episode, but I don't have the date of when I was. But yeah, we were talking all about what ails your garden and some of the solutions that were out there. So yeah, that was a good episode. And yeah, like you said, I think we just kind of clicked and was excited that you asked me back. And I was like, oh my gosh, a second episode? Oh, that's cool. And then yeah, I think it just it was just easy because we could feed off each other, and we were both in the industry, and we had worked at the same place and had similar passion. So yeah, I think it just kind of fed into itself, and we really just kind of grew into the show. It was great.
Yeah. And then that led us to discover that we actually shared the same birthday. So if our listeners don't know about that, was it in the air? Was it even on the air or something that we were like, no, that's not your birthday. So August 9th, everybody remember that both Matt and I several years ahead of him that I am, but that was just a shock. So I guess it was meant to be, right? So what's more to indicate that you meant to be co-hosts on a show and co-authors. Who knew? Gary, I can't believe you brought that up in the first episode.
I can't either. Matt, that's amazing. I don't even know I would have thought of that, right?
Either. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
such great.
we have a couple other garden shows here, and the listeners are cross listeners. I've gotten emails like that, and I'm sure the broadcasters have as well, that they listen to, the other shows. But all three of the shows, which made it very unique, is that even though they were garden shows, they were all different garden shows, meaning what you guys talk about was totally different than what Susan Poisner of the Urban Forestry Radio Show would talk about. She's more into trees and fruit trees and that type of thing. And when you got Stephen Biggs and Emma Biggs, they were more folks that not so much growing flowers, plants, whatever you want to call that. They were more into fruits and vegetables and figs and all that. So we had a whole potpourri for the green thumb out there, where if you're into trees and fruits and things like that, you'd listen to one show. If you're into regular gardening tips, garden design, like you guys are professionals, landscape design. They listen to you guys. And then, of course, for Stephen, he was specialty, with tomatoes and figs and this and that.
Yeah, lemons. And both of them came from being a guest on our show, right?
I believe so. I think
they both approached you after being guests on our show, and I know they approached me about the experience and the time and and both of them being writers and teachers. It was like Matt's a teacher. They all three of them teach at colleges for our next generation of gardeners. So I think it was really cool that happened.
It was, and that's why as I say, some people have written over the years. And they thought that reality radio was just a garden radio station.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they didn't listen to anything else, right?
Anything else?
So they would say, "Oh, Monday I'm going to listen to Matt and Joanne's show." Then they knew about Susan's show. Then they knew about Steve's show, and then they didn't listen to anything else. So they were assuming that this was like an outdoor HGTV radio kind of station. And I've gotten emails like that throughout the years and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, that
very
is neat.
Nice. Very cool.
So Matt, do you have a favorite, or even Gary, do you have a favorite? Like, was there a show? Let's put Gary on the spot. Was there a show or a topic that you that stands out? I know you have a lot of broadcasters and a lot of shows, so you can lie and make it up, or you can I don't know.
Well, a couple of shows for you guys. I loved your guest about the ponds.
Ernest.
That was a great show. I was really into that. I was also into you had a guy who did nightscape or landscaping with lighting and stuff. I can't remember. There was someone years ago. And then you had, I believe, a beekeeper at one time. Someone talked about bees and how to beekeep and all that. And that was another very interesting show to me. So those three shows stand out kind of in my mind where I was really taking notes and listening, with the premise of maybe in the future do one of those things, right? Like nightscape your yards and put in a bigger pond and maybe even, mess around with beekeeping. And those three shows were amazing.
Yes. Do you remember when you asked Ernest, Gary, do you remember when you asked Ernest about your pond was this big and how many fish could you have in it? And do you remember, like, it was such a complicated formula. Like, Matt, were you in one of those shows?
I remember that.
You were. And like, I think we just started laughing. Like, it was like, and he was, poor Ernest, he was so good. And he was so good at doing the math. And Matt and I, we're like, oh my God. Like, we thought he would say 3. Like,
that's what I thought.
It was like, well, you take the gallons, by the length and the width and the whatever, and it was such a formula. Oh my gosh, you guys have to go back and listen to. So that was Ernest Williams with Aquascape. I think he's been on 3 or 4 times. So I think one of the original times he was on, and Gary just asked a simple question about, my pound, I have a small pound this size, and how many fish should I get? And oh boy, it was like a really good
I remember that. It was like,
do you remember that? We were
I
all
do.
Like,
I was like,
and Ernest was so keen and so like serious about giving us the right answer, and the rest of us were like howling.
And I was looking for my calculator around here.
I know. Those of us in the room who are not good at math were like, "Whoa, I'm lost. I just want to buy 2 fish." That was a very funny episode. So and sure. But just the show, I think of Matt and I both planned on thinking of our favorites and things like that, and so I have favorite shows and I have favorite guests, but I think of Jan Johnson, who is a landscape designer from New York, who I'd admired and followed for many years. And then she found me and found the radio show, and she messaged me on my website on one of my blog posts and asked if she could, do a show about her upcoming book. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to talk to Jan Johnson. And so then she's been on 3 or 4 times to promote her books. And so I think that blew me away, that I had that, like, that I could do that, like that. I had the reach, or when people found me, like, it's one thing for me to go and like track people down or come up with ideas and stuff. But when they found me, it was really something.
Oh yeah, that's super special, especially because she's someone, a fellow designer that you've like looked up to and
Mm-hmm.
followed, and then she's coming to you. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's a
And
great
then I
honor.
got her to, I put her name in to speak at the Landscape Ontario Congress many years ago for the landscape designers. And so I got to meet her in person because she came up after she'd written Spirit of Stone. And so so she did the keynote, one of the keynote speakers for the Landscape Designer Day. And then she spoke at the Congress. And so that was very cool. That was very cool to, so that was really interesting how something like that evolved.
Yes, that's really fun. Yeah, I remember meeting her after the landscape design conference. Yeah,
Mhm.
so down to earth, easygoing, so
Yeah,
knowledgeable and friendly. Yeah, yeah, that was
yeah.
a great one for sure, for sure. Yes. Yeah, it was so hard to pick. We were, like you were saying,
Mhm.
we're trying to pick episodes and
Yeah.
things that we
So what
like, and
about you,
there's just
Matt?
so
What about
many,
you?
so many. Um, Wow, so many. I guess, I mean, guests. One of my favorite episodes was with Julia DeMacos, one of our many regular superstar
Yes.
guests. But it was fun because you were away, and I was talking to her about her new tea gardening for beginners book, and she was I think, our first and only official other co-host.
Hmm.
For the moment, and it was just such a great time because Julia again is so down to earth and personable, and she read the opening like you would, and we made it for her. So that was a great book as well, and just a great episode. So I think
Yeah,
that
she
was
joined. She
great.
was always a popular guest. Lots of questions, the veggies. So if you aren't following
Yeah.
Julia DeMacos, the gardening girl, you should check out her website and her YouTube videos. But yeah, it was great. We had her. I think she was sometimes like a last minute guest when we had someone a cancellation or a change, and then when we needed a co-host, we thought of that she would be perfect, and she agreed to do it. So that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, so many great topics, right? Starting seeds,
Mhm.
growing veggies, growing with grow lights. So knowledgeable on all of that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we had a couple of like a couple of houseplant people. Like I think of the houseplant guru, Lisa Steinkopf. We've had
Hmm.
Lisa joined us several times. So did Stephanie Rose, Garden Therapy. They both wrote books, but they also, I think the first time Lisa was on was just about houseplants because she built a following as the houseplant guru. And so it was great to get to know them and to reach out to people on social that I didn't know. It really put me out of my comfort zone because you're reaching out to people you don't know, and pitching them from their websites or from the Instagram. It was really interesting, and to have them join us, but then even come back to her another time. So yeah, so those were lovely ladies. And I'm thinking, oh, and we can't not mention Dawn Gallagher from Gardens Plus from here in Ontario, just east of Durham region. She was a guest, and she joined us earlier this season as well.
Hmm.
So she was a guest many times. I think we got up to five.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always great to have easy care perennials and a small. People often want to support local and support small garden centers, so we loved supporting Dawn as much as we could. So at Gardens Plus.
Yeah. And you had her on some of the radio episodes, didn't you, as
Hmm.
well? So not
Yeah,
even the podcast, but just way back when.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
some radio episodes for sure.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Wonderful. Yeah. So Dawn was a great guest too. Lots of easy care perennials and has a great operation there too, for
Hmm.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. One of the things we didn't talk about was why we went from, so you joined, and wasn't it just the radio show when you joined? And then shortly after you
Mm.
joining, we went to podcasts. And I think just because podcasts just started like out of the blue, because we always we've not changed the process necessarily, in the sense that, right, Gary, used to give me the record,
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
file and stuff. I think the biggest change was the music, because we couldn't use, well, when
Mm.
it was part of the radio station, because Gary pays the royalties for the music, he could play, like, so in my intro and outro, or if I had commercial breaks, he could play and like always play me out to hard rock music and stuff like that, which was a lot of fun. But you couldn't do that for podcasts, so that was really the change, was like getting royalty free music or purchasing music, and no longer playing that in changing our intros and outros, right, Gary?
That's correct. Yep, and they're really even today they're really, sticky on that stuff. So
Yes.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, when I was listening to that first episode, it was so weird because it'd been so long since I'd heard that when I first joined the show. Yeah, you had like 2 breaks and like rock music going in and out. And I was like, what?
I know.
Weird.
Which is why, because I never did, and I maybe still will get around to like editing those out and putting them back up on the podcast provider. But so that was all new, like investigating. So I think I had a student help me work that out. Like when we looked into it, I hired a student, and I'm like, I don't know how this all works, and I don't have time to figure it out. So
Yeah.
Olivia, please shout out to her. She figured out which was the best one. She compared, because then also even researching which is the best one, right? So she did that for me and got it all kind of set up, and then I had to like follow the instructions on how to do it. So that was kind of an interesting journey too.
Yeah, to enter the world of podcasts. Yeah, it was just growing so big and it's so popular then. But it just seemed like a smart move. I mean, we had such a great audience and have such a great audience here. Reality Radio 101, and to see if we could reach some other people. So yeah, it just seems so natural for us to do.
Yeah, and if that way, if somebody missed the show, like we heard from several people that loved listening while they gardened, or while they went for a walk. So that was kind of one of the things where you could, enjoy the show, but do something at the same time. So,
well, I think that's some of my favorite moments too, is our listener questions and just throughout the years, right? As you're saying, like listening while they're gardening. I think at one point a few years ago, we had a group from, I think, Arizona. We were in their newsletter. I have no idea. Neither of us, like, how did we get there? Who knows? But they were listening. If you guys are listening today, shout out to the group. Sorry, I forget your name. But he's written in a couple times that he and his friends are hanging out, having some beers or a barbecue and listening to us. So yeah, just kind of knowing that our listeners are out there are always fun. Yeah. We always had that lawn gag. Everybody writes in a lawn question, totally off topic, but there's always a haha. Just have to ask, can I rake my lawn? Which we're always.
When can I put fertilizer down, or when will the grass seed down?
Can I rake
yeah. And I think of listeners like Rose and Richard. So Rose was from New Brunswick, and Richard was from Quebec. Who were longtime listeners and reached out to me for a landscape design. So I actually did virtual designs, thanks to COVID and Zoom and all of that stuff. That was another thing that Zoom changed, was the ability to do that. And so it was lovely to help them and to see their pictures and work with them on that. So always wish there was more of those. We always felt that we couldn't get the design dilemma part or the design part going, but that's okay. I think we helped people with their gardens, and that was enough.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they may not be designing, or they may already have their garden, or feel that they're good at designing and know what they like. So yeah, again, we just loved that we could reach everybody. And like Gary said, talk about so many different things where Susan and Stephen are very specific. We can jump in and support them in other places and add a little bit of diversity. But yes, thank you. So thank you to all of our wonderful listeners. You guys have made it great and fun and exciting through all of the years on Reality Radio. I remember one of your first, again, listening back to that first episode, one of your first listeners, I think it was your second question, wrote in from Australia and was asking you about your last name and music and stuff like that. So yeah, we love our listeners and the fun questions and some of the really good stumping sciencey questions and questions.
I know, it was
we
always
didn't know.
Yeah, I know. I always love that too. Well, I think of but also learning about topics, having guests that taught us something.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things when we switched to kind of doing monthly themes, I really loved that. That helped us a lot, I think, right? To kind of focus. And we struggled though finding climate people, but we did when we interviewed Ray Jarvis and Tim Burrows. So Ray talked to us about solar power. I learned so much and understood so much more there. And that episode, as well as from Tim Burrows about electric cars. So I found those are really two good episodes that we're not really garden related, but they really, were climate, and they were kind of controversial. So we had, interesting debate from our listeners' questions and comments and stuff. Some we could read and some we actually couldn't read, especially the electric car people. And this was many years, like this was a few years ago, and I think things have changed even since then. But those were topics that I found super fascinating, that were, not necessarily about your garden, but just, climate change and the our ever-changing society. So yeah, thank you to those two shows. And I'd love to know, I know our listeners are writing in questions or comments, and I'd love to know if somebody has a favorite show that or topic that they liked.
Yes, indeed. What was your favorite topic, episode, maybe funny moment, guest that you have heard of or enjoyed from the show over the years? Maybe we haven't mentioned it, maybe we have. We'd love to know. Down the Garden Path podcast at hotmail.com. You can write us there. As we hit that half hour, I'll jump in and say again, thank you for joining us here live on Reality Radio 101. I'm Matthew Dressing here with my co-host and co-author, Joanne Shaw, and you're listening to Down the Garden Path. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting and relevant topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from our research and from the wonderful guests that join us here on the show. Don't forget, you can spend more time with us down the garden path. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Down the Garden Path Podcast is our handle there. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider with tons of past evergreen episodes and interesting topics and guests like we're talking about tonight on all of your favorite podcast providers. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to be notified of new content. And please don't forget to like, share, and leave us a comment. As we were just reminiscing, we love hearing from all of our listeners and seeing what you're doing. Again, thank you to everybody who has sent us emails over the last couple of weeks, because that's the second last time I'll be reading that. We will be getting back to you as things just pick up and busy.
That's
so don't forget, you can write us here at downthegardenpath at hotmail.com, or don't forget to check out our websites. You can find Joanne www.down2earth.ca and myself at www.naturalaffinity.ca. So if you've been tuning in, don't forget, we've mentioned some of our past, as we look down the garden path, the radio show. So those past episodes, and there are about 90 of them, I think. There's at least almost 100 of them sitting there. But it is at Down to Earth. Sorry, I almost was going to say that. Down to Earth, and you can only find them on your website. So we'll have them in the show notes. But it is downtoearth.ca/category/Down the Garden Path Radio Show, hyphens between all the words. So there's lots of great guests and past stuff that you can't find on your favorite podcast provider. So go check that out. I had a lot of fun reminiscing with that first episode.
I'm scared to listen to that first episode. Oh my gosh. I remember I ended up deleting some of the notes. Like I kept the notes for a long time and stuff like that. I think probably have the hard copies and files here and stuff. So
one of the comments I thought was funny from that show, and one of the topics that we've covered here, Gary, was that you guys were talking about stuff and the word pot came up, or grass, and there was a joke that you guys were joking about cannabis, and oh no, don't talk about that because back then it wasn't legal, it was a hot topic.
Yeah.
And you very quickly moved from that, but it's funny because you and I have done a couple shows on that. We just recently had Sarah Oster-Lee join us on the show for that.
Yeah.
So it's so funny that even just over 9 years, how gardening just completely changes. So does the world around us.
Yeah, who would have thought 9 years ago about the legalization? I guess it's been like 4 years now. It's been legal.
2018, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or almost 5, yeah.
Oh, okay.
5 in October.
Yeah, so that is very interesting. Yeah, that it was like almost taboo, and when people mentioned yeah, you're right. So that was kind of funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and then other people that found us, Matt, like you brought up Katie. You want to talk about Katie?
Oh yeah, Katie DeBow. from Garden Media Group. Yeah, that was one of my favorite guests and groups of episodes because it's always fun to see what is happening out in the gardening world. So Katie DeBow, president and I want to say owner, but I think president at least of the Garden Media Group. And she always joined us. She joined us for 4 episodes, 2019, 2020, 2022, and 2023 for the Garden Trends Report. So you can Google Garden Media Group, Garden Trends Report, and every year they send out, Katie's team sends out this amazing report on what's going to be trending and why and how hot it is going to be and the color of the year, all sorts of gardening industry related material. So it's always exciting to see. I know a lot of like the garden center that I worked at or that we worked at once upon a time, they always followed it. They were always excited about
I
it.
didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so it was really fun for Katie to join us and kind of give us a sneak peek and see what was hot and trending in all of our gardens. So yeah, shout out to Katie and the Garden Media Group. I think that's one that we'll all miss, but we'll definitely still be following it for sure.
Oh, we've had so many listeners writing in, but Hank has just written in and he said, so many great episodes, it'd be very hard to suggest one favorite. Just think there are so many people that listen to you for years and years. We will all miss our Monday night coffee clutch radio show. I used to even take notes. Thanks. So thanks, Hank. Yes, he's written in a lot, and that's lovely that you took notes. So that's wonderful.
That is wonderful. Thank you, Hank.
Yes, yeah. So I don't know if we want to read a few of these.
I was going to say kind of on the opposite side, Hank, who's listened for years, Brian has written in, hello, Garden Path. Can I say the S word? I just started to listen to you a few weeks ago, and now, boo-hoo. I love the show about Venus flytraps and the other plants that ate things. So cool. We'll miss you, Brian. So thank you so much, Brian, for tuning in, for finding us. We'd love to know how you found us and how you heard about us. We are always interested in that. But yes, don't forget, Down the Garden Path podcast on all of your favorite podcast providers. Tons of past episodes. Again, we're now on YouTube. So if you're not a podcaster, but you are a YouTube scroller, we're there as well at Down the Garden Path podcast.
We are still getting years up though, right? We've got.
Yes, YouTube's a little slower. If you Google all of the other major podcast providers, all of the episodes are there. Again, radio shows are only on your website, but that might change once upon a time. Mm-hmm. And YouTube, we are slowly building. My fault. I'm making that transition and uploading the graphics and making sure everything.
Yeah, it's funny. The sound is the easy part. It's the graphics. Yeah. Like YouTube's a bit tricky. And Gary, would YouTube be again? We also couldn't play the old music on YouTube.
That's correct. Yeah, it's copyright infringement.
Yeah. So we can't do that. Let's not get booted off just as we got on it. So we may go back and edit some of those out. But so thank you, Gary, for telling us that.
No problem.
And Cindy has said, so sad, like Elton John's song lyric, it's a sad, sad situation. We're sad, so sad, good luck. Oh, thank you, Cindy. And Kelly says, oh my God, I did not know, Joanne and Matt, that is so sad. It's like losing dear friends. I cannot thank you enough for the great advice. Wow, so beautiful. Good luck in the future. Thank you so much, Cindy.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Tim's written in, so funny. I remember some of those guests. Wow, what memories. This is so sad, but all good things do come to an end sometimes. I will always remember Matt and Joanne. Good luck. Well, thank you so much, Tim.
Yeah.
Yes, that means so much to all of us. It almost looks like you got tears going.
No. I mean, it was. Oh, okay. I mean, I want people to know it was like a very hard decision to make, right? That this wasn't easy. And Anne has said you had some amazing guests over the years, such professionals, such advice. May you be blessed in your future projects, Anne. Thank you, Anne. So this wasn't, an easy decision, and we're very thankful for everybody. We can't not mention our favorite thing. One of our favorite big parts was the month in the garden episodes, right? We did that for 2 straight years, and we started them again up to this is 3 years now of doing, the last Monday of the month is talking about what people should do or don't do in their garden. And those were always such popular episodes. kind of grew out of my newsletter, and kind of, Matt kind of took the newsletter notes and expanded on them further. And then that's where we based the book. So really, the listeners, I think you guys helped us publish a book.
Yeah, I mean, it was always interesting as we started talking about what was a month in the garden. Yeah, I mean, you had your amazing newsletter and still do. So again, sign up at down2earth.ca with your monthly tips. I was going to reverse some consonants there. Yeah, and then we just kept getting amazing listener questions. So I just kept adding more stuff to what else are people asking. And yeah, like you said, we eventually came to writing the book. And again, Gary asked you on the very first episode.
I know.
This whole series
we did think that the book, like, we thought, oh, we've got tons of content. This will be a piece of cake, right? We thought we'd start in February, or we started in September, and we thought, oh, we'll be done by Christmas and it'll be published by February. And oh my gosh, it was way harder than we thought. So yeah, so it was a fun process, but way harder. Even though we felt like we had a ton of content, we were like, I remember staging, like trying to in spring tried to in winter try to stage spring photos like outside.
Yeah.
Remember I was like cleaning like off my front steps with like garden tools and oh my gosh, trying to take photos. So pictures was one part where like we might have had topics that we talked about or ideas, but then we needed pictures and it wasn't the right season necessarily. And so that's why normal people would have like done a year in advance, right? Like they would have been writing and taking photos for a year and then they published the book. But no, we didn't do that. So that was kind of fun. But so thank you to all the listeners and everybody who contributed to those month in the garden episodes. We're still going to do one next month. We're doing one next week for July in the garden. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think someone wrote in and asked that, and I forget where it is. Oh, Darlene here. Is tonight the last Down the Garden Path show? No, we do. Everybody have one more. Next week is our final send off with a July in the garden, for sure. And that reminds me of another question. Just speaking about the book, a shout out to Janet Bacone and
Elwyn Press, yes,
who just helped us go through the book, edit it, kept us on track, and just kept us going. So thank you so much, Janet, as well, for all of your work on making it go through. And I just trying to think, there was someone who also just wrote in, and I'll find it here and I'll read it in a second, but another guest about the book as well.
Gary, you should write it. But talk about somebody who should write a book. Now I'm thinking how you should write a book about your journey on satellite radio or internet radio. So you have to call up Janet when you are ready to write a book, because that should be something that you do too.
I don't think people want to read 60,000 pages.
Maybe it's a textbook for radio.
Radio technicians. What not to do. No, this would be the WKRP in Cincinnati and Oshawa,
That's right. That's true. Oh,
that was a
good show.
Yeah, for me arguing with broadcasters, hey, clean the toilet, flush the toilet, there's women that live here. You know what I mean? No smoking on the premises. Hey, pick up your bottled water. It's hilarious, right? The memories.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Matt and I, so we do the show for an hour. I drive, 40 minutes or so to do the show, and Matt would whip over from work to do me to do the show. And then we do the show for an hour and then stand outside in your driveway, Gary, for another 45 minutes, regardless of the weather, rain, shine.
I remember that. I remember
other, like the 8:00 show, like the 8:00 show people were like right after we left, but then the 9:00 show people would show up early and we were still in your driveway talking. So
I remember that. And
remember that? Oh my God.
I'll tell you what I remember is you and Matt one Christmas giving my ex-wife and I a beautiful plant. And I remember, I told you this story before, but for our listeners, I opened the door at some point in time and there's this beautiful plant there, beautiful arrangement. And I'm thinking, who the heck dropped this off or gave us this? I have no clue. And I'm banging my head against the wall for hours and hours. And finally, I don't remember if my ex told me this or me, but we said, why don't we just look at the video relay, the security video.
Yeah.
And we found out after I see this guy in a bright green or bright yellow shirt. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was green because I think you came
Green.
from work, right, Matt?
Yeah.
And I look and I go, oh my gosh, it was Matthew. And, you know, I couldn't, and it was a gorgeous arrangement, you know, that Joanne and Matt gave us for, I think it was a holiday.
Yeah,
I think
it was like a Christmas for urn,
Yeah.
for an urn at your front door.
And I still have the actual container. And I think I still have some of the twigs and stuff that you guys put in.
Yeah, some of the stuff you could use.
And but I'll never forget that, how stupid I was to wonder who would do that or who did it. and then I saw Matt on 17 cameras, you know, it's like so that was a really beautiful highlight and thoughtful gesture by the two of you. I'll never forget that.
Oh, well,
it was nice surprising you.
Yes, it was. And
thank you.
we really appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Everything you've done over the years.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then we went to staying after on Zoom and then getting on another, like we'd have our show on Zoom and then we get on another Zoom and chat some more. And then lately, Matt, we've just been like, nope, we're both like, we're done. Like, goodbye. We have been planning it a different time of the week, but so he can't get rid of me yet. And I say to Matt that even though I drive him crazy, he's going to miss me, but.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, I will. I mean, we do this. I'm going to miss Gary too. I mean, we all meet every Monday night and talk all about gardening, which we all love. And so it'll be definitely.
Well, we'll still do things. I mean, we'll communicate, and I want to keep in touch. I'm sure a lot of your listeners will keep in touch. So make sure you keep plugging that email address that they can. Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And same, we're going to keep the Facebook group open as well. I know many of you have not joined it, but it is there and it is a perfect place to, to get updates from what we're doing next and to ask your gardening questions and learn from other listeners, much like we do on the show. So we're going to keep doing that. And we hope that more people will join and that you can follow us along on our journey there.
Yes, exactly. Don't be dissuaded as well because it is a private group. So we just to keep out spammers and weird stuff. It is just a nice, private, inclusive, down the garden path group. So we hope that you will join us there. Share lots of your pictures. Thank you to James again, a regular listener. Said, hey, Joanne and Matt, I'm in Oshawa today. Took a beautiful photo because we just had the Peony Festival here in Oshawa. The peonies are fabulous, looking beautiful at the Kingsman Valley Garden Botanical. I'm saying it wrong completely, but at our botanical gardens, they're absolutely beautiful. So thank you, James, for the photos. But we would love you to share your own photos and your gardening photos and your plant questions and insect pest questions there at Down the Garden Path Podcast on Facebook as well. So another question, circling back to the listener, Tracy, she'd written in, hello, Joanne and Matthew. I recently started listening to your podcast and love it. I also got your book and have started reading it. Very informative and beautifully laid out. Former Whitby resident, living about an hour further east these days. And we're going to talk to her about growing blueberry bushes. So Tracy, if you're listening, we will be talking to you soon about growing blueberries. But thank you very much for picking up a copy of our book, which everybody can do on amazon.ca or .com, your step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden or any garden nearby. Just the zones and the timing are slightly off, but a wonderful book with lots of information. So thank you, Tracy. Can you believe we've only got like 10 minutes left?
Oh my goodness.
What are we missing?
What else though? I know what else. Well, I want to so I talked about learning something that wasn't necessarily garden related, but two episodes stand out to me as well. And so many episodes do. So don't, and I know you've got a couple that you wanted to talk about, but I think about interviewing Joel Karsten and learning about straw bale gardening. That was just fascinating. I can remember like my mouth open like the whole time he was talking and explaining and stuff. And then I sought out Evelyn Haddon early on. I think she's a radio show about health strip gardening, as I had that dilemma on my front lawn. Now I'm not like, I don't have a sidewalk, so it's like my front lawn goes right to the curb and that tough area along the curb that I couldn't grow. And so learning about lasagna gardening and learning about cardboard, like it just transformed my yard much easier than had I had to like rip everything out myself. So, but learning about that and learning, and her book was so beautiful, and how the different communities, you know, did do their boulevards, and that trend is still going more and more, like especially with the revival of pollinators and the focus on doing that. So I think of those two topics that I learned all about by interviewing those two great guests.
Yeah. Well, like as you say, you know, converting the hell strip, and then I always forget his name, and I bring him up often to you, but the Buffalo Garden Walk.
Yes, Jim. Yep.
Jim, I almost said Jim, but yeah, and hearing about all those wonderful initiatives and the people in Buffalo and transforming all those yards is definitely a movement. And there's just so many different ways that everybody can be gardening, right? There is a lot of right answers, but you know, there's just so many ways you can implement that. So yeah, those are really exciting new ways and different ways to be gardening for sure.
Yeah. Did you have any other favorite themes?
You know what, like you say, I mean, there are just so many great. It's so hard. We've mentioned so many, and that doesn't mean that we don't like all of the ones that we've done, because we're passionate about all of our guests and all the topics, or else we wouldn't have done it for so long. I'm a bit of a bibliophile myself. I love collecting a good gardening book. I really enjoyed our Authors Month theme. There were a lot of great books in there. We had Toronto Gardener's Journal. We had just so many awesome books. We had Julia. We had the Mocha Gardener, and starting to be, you know, sustainable gardening, which is a very hot topic right now as well. There were just straw bale gardening,
hydroponics.
Yep,
I'm
with
thinking
Tyler.
about some of the books. Yep.
Yeah, I should be looking over at my thing, looking at tiny plants with.
Leslie Halleck. Yes.
Leslie Halleck, thank you. Just so many great, wonderful gardening books.
Yeah.
So
Jan Johnson, she had the Spirit of Stone, but then she did the Gardentopia and the Floratopia, which were beautiful books. I mean, we really did. Yeah, you're right. Authors, like that was really kind of a niche thing that we came up with when we introduced themes, and that was wonderful. And I think we tried to do November so that they could be good gifts, ideas for people as well as the garden season was winding down. So that was really cool. So I hope our listeners enjoyed that as much as we did. Yeah.
As you say, gifts too. I mean, we've done a few of the Christmas gifts or gifts for gardeners. I liked those episodes too, because I never really think of buying myself something for Christmas but you always need something for the garden for yourself. So those were always fun episodes too. And we had Garden Gate. I'm going to forget our guest name from Garden Gate. But yeah,
keep going.
I think it was it Kristen Bean Sullivan?
I believe so. Yes.
She spoke last year with us. Yes. That was always fun too. So
yeah,
so many wonderful episodes about. I mean, pick a topic.
I know. Well, you said ask us anything. That was one of the things that you forgot. You didn't mention, but you did mention to me before the show. You said you loved those and that was great because you are the listeners. Whoops! As I hit my mic. That's one thing that drove Gary crazy too, is my hand motions all the time bumping into things. But anyway, not even with the big mic at the studio, with my little mic too. But to ask us anything, those were shows where we were like, we don't know what we want to talk about. Let's see what the listeners want to talk about. And we'd have like a few questions, and then you guys would just take it away. And those were always great.
Those are always great episodes. And that was one of my favorite things too, is there's always interacting with the listeners, seeing what's going on in your gardening, what's on your top of mind. And,
there was always that little panic that you wouldn't be there to ask questions, that we'd be like, okay, we get no questions and we can fake it till we make it. But we never had to, right?
No, we never ever really did. We always had someone like William who would write in and say, "Hi Matt, can I rake my lawn now?" And yes, you can, William.
Thank you, William. We needed that lawn question, that lawn comment. So yes, you can rake the lawn and then water it, William.
Yes, summer is coming.
Yeah,
yes. And we'll talk about that next week.
That's right.
For sure.
I know. So I think I'm looking at my notes. I think I covered everybody. The lots of trees. So anybody I know who's listening that might have small trees now, and in 5 years you're going to have big trees. But we have interviewed several arborists over the years. So we've got several shows from arborists, which was great information. So Davy Tree, and who was the other one? Davy Tree. So you can search under arborist and to tree care. It's really important to take care of your trees now more than ever. So lots of great information there.
Yes, indeed. You were always on the show too. You were always very trees and shrubs, and I was always very like annuals and perennials. I'm herbaceous, and you like the woody stuff. So it was always, that was a fun dichotomy too.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, we did have our opposites and stuff, and the science, like, oh my gosh, you guys, I just wish I'd taken pictures of screenshots of your face when we get science stuff. Oh,
like a little kid on his birthday.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So I'm so mad that I can't think of the names now. I'm going to find them.
Okay. Well, we hit the end.
Oh, I had 3. So Richard Gilmore came on early on. That was a radio show. The importance of hiring an arborist. I think he was one of the first shows as well. And then Tree Care with Mark Irwin. He was with the tree company.
I don't remember. I looked at that.
No, Bartlett Trees. So Steve, Mark, apparently, because we did have a listener look for him and realized that he is no longer with Bartlett Trees, but that was that. And then, so that was very interesting. And so, and I think I know Davy Trees as well, when they came to Canada, so Jason Ealing, he was on several on the radio show as well. So some of those we talked about, was like Emerald Ash Borer when that was happening. So that was really nice. So Gary, you wanted to, Joanne, stop talking.
No, everything's good. No, I'm really I just, like in awe, right? Thinking this is all going to come to an end. And I don't know what to say except, again, like your listeners, you've given so much great advice over the years, so many great guests. And here's the thing, it's all free to them anyways. So where else can you get this type of advice every Monday night? So a wonderful, beautiful job that the two of you have done.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for helping us make it possible, because we couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you. I just hit buttons. That's it.
Well, I know, but even the COVID, like all of that happened so fast, and switching and transitioning to everything. So, I think I'd done a couple episodes from hotel rooms on vacation.
Yeah.
Right, Matt?
Yeah.
I think I've done that a couple times, and stuff. And then we got co-hosts, or Matt did it solo. And the early shows where Gary was just you and me, and and you were supporting and reading the listener questions and stuff like that, reminding me to not talk about myself and all those fun things.
Well, we do have, folks, just remember, next week we're still here. So
we're still here.
So,
we're July in the garden. So we're going to talk more about July in the garden. So join us next week, everybody.
That's right. We'll see you then. Thank you for tuning in to Reality Radio 101. You're listening to Down the Garden Path. And we'll see you next week for the final episode. Take care until then. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.